I came down from Kansas, and I was married to a lady named Mary, and she died in 1877 here in Silver City. I was one of the lawmen, and I sat on the school board, and I was a very respected man in the community. The big jailbreak happened there on by the Elephant Corral, and there was 3 individuals that escaped. And as they escaped, they gathered all kinds of, they had 4 6-shooters, they had shotgun and Bowie knife, and it was Kip Joy and this guy by the name of Tagger, and 2 or 3 other guys got together by the name of Carlos Chavez and a gentleman by the name of Charles Spencer. They told him, better not go with him, you guys going to get shot. And they told him, I'd rather get shot than be hung. So as the time went on, they hung out there by the corral, the Elephant Corral there on Hudson. They took off 8 miles up north of Silver City, up by Pinos Altos. And as they went on, they gathered a posse where they got this guy by the name of Coomer. And Coomer was a rancher, and he borrowed a gun from this baker. He was about 43 years old, borrowed a gun and a horse. Well, Coomer got down on one knee, shot, and killed George Washington. And as they came back to retrieve the body, the rest of the posse came by, and me being Joseph LaFleur, I bypassed Joy Kip. And Joy Kip was underneath the bushes and ambushed me and killed me right on the spot with a 12-gauge shotgun that was stolen there at the jailhouse. They buried me on March 15th, 1884, and rumors to be said, both of them Tagger got hung, and Carlos got hung, and I ended up with 6 children. They moved on over with my brother-in-law back to Ohio on May 9th of 1884. And that's my story, and I have no grave.
Thank you, Dante.
I was Rebecca Brewer. I came to Silver City in 1902, and I was a very tall, big black woman. And there was, as it is right now, very few black people here. But I didn't ever have any trouble racial-wise. Most of the trouble was between the Hispanic and the Anglo. So I, and I had no skills, of course. I just did whatever was necessary. One of my first jobs was to be the construction boss on the first building on the school campus of Western New Mexico University. It wasn't a university at the time, it was called the Normal School, and I was the boss to help to build that school. I also was deputized by the sheriff to help bring in women prisoners. One day I went in to talk to the sheriff, and the man grabbed me and held me, and the sheriff had his gun out and told him, let her go. And he said, no, I'm getting out of here. And the sheriff shot, boom, and the man fell dead at my feet. Thank God he was a good shot. Also, I was called Madam Brewer. And I had learned early from the time I was here, because I stayed in Silver City, I heard it was a place where you could get great wealth. And so I thought, okay, and that's why I just did whatever was necessary. I saved up my money. I never married, never had any children. I met the Warners, and they told me that money was in the land. So I started purchasing land all around this town, mostly in a place where where it's called now Brewer Hill. And I owned a lot of that land where it is. That's why they called it Brewer Hill. I believe someone told me it was used to be called Mad Dog Hill because it was a very rough group up there. But anyway, that's where I made my home. And I love children. I never had any of my own. I always looked out for the kids. I didn't like to see them with no shoes or school supplies or whatever was necessary, food. I was right there to help them. I even had a little store in my home where I sold little penny candies, and the kids could come and eat, and and buy a little candy, and if they didn't have money, which most people didn't have at those times, they could just do little odds and ends around my yard or something and get them a little money so they could purchase the candy. Now, I didn't believe in banks. Oh, no, no, no. No, no, I didn't believe in banks. I kept my money on me, or I kept it in my mattress in my bedroom. And one day, in my little penny store, I had herbs and spices and potions. That's what I was known for. They would come to me if you wanted somebody to fall in love with you. You could purchase one of my potions and make the person fall in love. And just the opposite, if you wanted them to fall out, you could get rid of them too. And also, I had give you remedies for your headache, for your backache, whatever ailed you. I had a little herb or something, and people came to me. Well, that got me into trouble. I got arrested. I was getting more patients than the doctors were, and so they brought me up on charges for practicing medicine without a license. And the sheriff called me in and told me that I was going to jail if I didn't pay my fine. And my fine was $100. So I just reached down and pulled up my apron and took out that money and handed it to him and walked out. I never had any more problems, and I kept practicing my medicine. Well, one night my house caught on fire. One afternoon, everybody in the neighborhood, in Silver City, if there's a fire or there's some kind of commotion, everybody comes out. And they were all standing there, and the little kid said, "Where's your mattress?" Because they knew where I kept my money. And I said, "Oh, I didn't have time to get my mattress." Those little children ran back in that house and drug my mattress out and saved my money. That's how much they loved me. And I just loved them. I got ill. I was in some kind of a car accident, and I wound up in Fort Baird. I was 101 years old, and I passed away. That's my story.
That was awesome. Thank you. And this is the grave right here, eh?
All right. Yep, that's it. I don't know who tends to the grave. She had no relatives here. And I believe when she passed away, they found a relative in Georgia, a sister or something, that came to pick her body up, but or to bury her, and never has returned since. So, but somebody in the community comes out, I guess, and kind of tends to the grave.
I'm Forrest Norrell, born 1833. Joined the military when I was 32 years old. And in 1965, I joined the military. I was a Buffalo soldier here at Fort Baird. And I lived here, worked here, and I died here.
He was a very nice man. He was a good man. An honest.
Okay. I'm William Dennis Murray. William Dennis Murray. I was born in 1870. And there are three things that define me. Whiskey, the Buffalo Soldiers, and money. I was born up at Fort Laramie, Wyoming. My dad was a soldier. He was sent to Fort Selden. That's where north of where Las Cruces is today, when I was about 10, but I didn't get to stay there very long. My parents were good Catholics. And they made me sent me to St. Michael's in Santa Fe Catholic school, and from there I went to the Christian Brothers College in St. Louis. I learned how to operate a telegraph. So when I was 16, 1886, my dad was transferred to Fort Baird. And I found out there was a job opening to operate a telegraph. So I got my first job. 16, I was a little late. Most boys had to go to work when they were 12 or 13. Geronimo hadn't surrendered. So I sent messages about Geronimo massacring people, raiding people, Pretty soon he did surrender. But I got interested in the post store, and I learned a lot about merchandising and making money. So in the early 1890s, I went over to Central City. I think they call it Santa Clara today. They had about 300 people. Fort Beard had 500. Pinos Altos had a little over 1,000. Silver City had a little over 2,000. I opened a merchandising store, kind of the futuristic Walmart. I had a little bit of everything. A lot of those little miners had mining claims, but they didn't have any money, so I sold them merchandise on credit. And I took a lien on their mining claims. Those mining claims became valuable. They never repaid the money. But I took those mining claims and sold them and eventually made several $100,000, millions in today's money. I married the school teacher over there. Her name was Martha Jones. In 1904, Silver City had a little more luster. We moved over here to Black Street. I kept my store in Central City. I became a politician. I was always a Republican. I represented this area when it was still a territory in the legislature. When New Mexico became a state in 1912, I was on the state constitution board to adopt the Constitution. Then I was the first legislature. I was a senator, Republican of course, from this area, representing Silver City and Grant County. My grandson Murray Ryan kept up the good work, and he represented this area as a state representative for about 35 years. Money was never too far from my mind. I owned the first telephone company. I owned the power company. I owned the waterworks company. I was president of the Silver City National Bank for about 20 years. And then in 1920s, my son-in-law and I built the Murray Hotel. It cost about $600,000. I really, though, became rich with those mining claims. In 1924, I went broke, but I became rich again. In 1933, I took a lesson from the Kennedys in New England. When Prohibition was over, I had liquor and whiskey ready for everybody in southwestern New Mexico. And in a few years, I made several $100,000. Well, about 1850, I started getting a little old, and I died in 1952. They buried me here. I imagine because I already had some siblings buried here, but I would prefer to have been buried in the Catholic cemetery, being a good Catholic. I had two daughters. Lida stayed here. She lived to be 101, died prematurely, Lida Ryan. And she had 4 children. Martha Hill. She, being a good Catholic, had 9 children. One of them still lives here today. And Murray Ryan, of course, was the legislature, and he has descendants in this area today. Being 152, I'm a little feeble, so I'm going to have to sit down. But be sure you give me my Buffalo Soldier cap, my whiskey bottle, and give me my money back to me. Thank you.
Thank you. That was super interesting.
My name is Liz Michaels, pronounced like the boy's name, but not spelled
Okay.
that way. So it's Mikols.
I was born in 1825 on the 4th of July in Bainbridge, Ohio. My father and I moved to Springfield, Illinois, and I started studying law. And from there I went into battle with the Army to Mexico for the Mexican-American War, and came back after that. We captured Mexico City, and then went back to Springfield, continued my law degree. Eventually ended up in the Civil War. I rejoined the Army and got injured in the Civil War, and so I got an honorable discharge, went back to Illinois. From there I passed to Missouri, and from Missouri I went to Las Cruces, was an attorney there, came and lived at PA, and was an attorney in Silver City. I was involved in the territorial Macon, Silver City, and in Grant County, and the state, individual state in the territory. So that was when New Mexico became a state, and moved to Silver City, became mayor of Silver City in the late 1800s, and was a judge here in Silver City, and then passed away in June 23rd of 1903.
I'll start at the beginning. Howdy, I'm Nat Straw, and I was born in Canada in 1856, and it's pretty cold up in Canada, so I decided I wanted to come someplace warm. So I came down here to Silver City, and it's nice and warm almost all year round, and it's beautiful here. I really liked it. I told myself, I'm going to live and die here. I'll spend the rest of my life here. So I kept that part of my story. I am living, well, I'm died here. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I did when I first moved down here. I got a job as a ranch hand, rode horseback, riding herd and stuff. But that's hard work. You get sunburnt, you get frostbite, you get wet and dry and tore up with trees and stuff. So I decided I'm going to find something a little easier. About that time the railroad was coming through here, so I went and got a job at the railroad. But that job was just as heavy and hard as cowboying, if not more so, because those railroad ties and rails, those were pretty heavy. So I gave up on that and decided to do what I really want to do. What I really like to do is spend time out in the mountains and hunt grizzly bears and mountain lions. And so I went up to the Mogollon area, my mountains up there, spent a lot of time doing that. But there's this one old bear up there, he was a silver-tipped grizzly, and everybody called him Old Silver. But the ranchers were getting pretty tired of him because he was eating up all their profit. He killed and ate lots of sheep and lots of cattle. So they hired me on a monthly basis to go out and try and get that old bear. So I took them up on their offer, and they told me if you get him, we'll give you a $250 bounty. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. I can retire on that. So I took off after him, and he led me on a merry chase. We'd go walking 30 miles a day, if not more. So I chased him for months doing that. One day, I was sitting up on the top of a knoll as the sun was going down, and I look off into the bushes off to the side there, and I saw a sheep tail bobbing around there. So I thought, I wonder if there's a sheep in there that old Silver's going to want to have for supper. So I figured I'd see if there was a sheep over there that the bear was going to eat. So I snuck up there as quiet as I could, got about 75 feet away, and sure enough, there was old Silver there eating the last of his sheep. And he was picking his teeth with his bear claw. And I stepped on a branch at that point. And he looks up and he sees me, and he stands up, and he's big as the Rock of Gibraltar. And he lets out a roar that was shaking all the trees around me. So I thought, well, if I'm going to get him, I better get him now before it gets too dark. So I aimed my rifle at him and was popping off rounds at him, trying to get him down before he got to me. Well, I emptied the gun, and he was still coming at me, so I figured I better get up a tree. So I dropped the rifle, climbed a tree, sat up there on the branch like a squirrel. And And that old bear, he was trying to get up the tree to get to me, but he couldn't get up there. He was just too big. So I'm hoping he's going to go away, but he doesn't. He just lays down at the base of that tree and goes to sleep. So I'm thinking, I'm going to have to sit here all night long. And I was getting colder and colder. So I kind of froze up there onto that tree branch. But the next morning, the sun comes up. And when the sun came up, the old bear, he woke up too. And he looks up at me, kind of smiles, laughs a little bit. And he reaches over and gets my rifle, which he had leaned up against the tree that sometime during the night. And he looks at me, works the lever, points it up at me and goes, "Click." I knew it was empty, so I wasn't too scared, but the bear didn't know it. So he thought something was wrong, so he does it again. Click. And it didn't go off, so he's looking a little bit angry. And he looks up at me and he's waving down to me to throw some ammunition. Well, I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. I wasn't about to give that bear any ammunition. So I did that. No, sir. And the old bear, he takes my rifle and he beats it up against a rock and breaks it into a million pieces. And then he looks up at me again and kind of smiles like, "Good luck on that." And he takes off, walking away, just not a care in the world. Finally climb down, pick up my rifle, and I think, well, I can't go get that bear with this rifle. So I just decided to go head on home and take my losses of the gun and the money. And that old bear's still running around out there somewhere. And I'm laying here now. Thank you.
I'm I'm Mrs. Lewis Kennan. When I moved to Silver City, because my husband thought the weather would be good for me, it was too harsh up north. So we came to Silver City in the spring of '75, but I died in January of '76 of pneumonia. So the cure did not work.
Leonidas Lytle, and I was a recipient of the Medal of Honor. I saved Private Giese from a band of Apaches during the Indian Wars.
James E. Woodard, cattleman, construction, mining. My father came over from England in 1875. We ended up moving all over the place. I ended up going on a whaler in 1872 when I was about 19 years old, because I was not a farmer like my father was. My brother went along with me. We signed up on this whaler for 4 years. I got down to around the Azores in, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. I said, I am not a whaler. I do not like the ocean. So I got jumped ship at the Azores, picked up another ship that was headed north, did a little work on that ship. We found another ship that was heading to New York. He took me on to do minor stuff on board. Hit a lot of fruit on it, which we lost most of it because the winds were unfavorable. Took 2 weeks longer. Got back to New York almost a year after I left. Went down to the family, which was now in Kent, Ohio. Went down to Missouri from there. Still don't want to be a farmer. Went to Colorado School of Mines. Got some certifications. Went to the mines in Nevada. Heard about the silver strikes in Silver City. Came down here. Put up an assay office on Bullard Street. Did a lot of local assaying, even for some of the big mines. Married a woman that had been abandoned by her husband, and I got a job up in the Cooney mines as manager. Took her up there. We had a son born up there. On the way back to Silver one time, when the son was still itty bitty, we ran into some people on horseback, and they happened to be Apaches, and so we turned the buggy around, headed back towards Alma, and then Nadia was driving. I was in the back of the buckboard with my little trusty Remington 44, trying to keep the Indians at bay, which we did. Made it back there to Alma. We had to spend a couple days besieged. Finally came back here to Silver City. Was taking care of some business. Had a tenant that I was trying to remove. And went out to tear his shack down, which was degrading my property. I was pulling some nails out of the roof when he shot a hole through the roof, including my foot. I ended up with a prosthetic after that. That was the last of my gun stuff. After that, it was mostly business as usual, running mines, running cattle, doing construction, and raising a family, which many of them are with us over here.
My name is Mary Phillips Richard Casey. I was born April 3rd, 1846 in Southampton, England. I was the second of two children. I had an older brother and a younger brother who came here from England with us. I was only 3 when we moved to Brownsville, Texas, where my father started a school. I had a younger sister who was born here in the United States in 1851. The following year, my mother had an accidental fall to her death. In 1859, my father was murdered and the killer was never found. My brothers and my sister were adopted, but at age 13, I returned to England, where I continued my studies. I learned Spanish, German, Italian, French, and Portuguese. In 1873, at the age of 27, I returned to the United States to find my brother in Fayetteville County, Texas, on a large ranch there. In 1874, I applied and accepted a job as teaching in Silver City, New Mexico. My real claim to fame is that one of my students was William Henry Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid. His mother is buried here also in Memory Lane. I remember him as a scrawny little fellow with delicate hands and an artistic nature. He was always quite willing to help out with chores around the school. He was no more problem than any other young boy of his age growing up in the mining town. He was sure that we were related because we were both ambidextrous and able to write equally well with either hand. I stopped teaching October 5th, 1875, when I married Charles Casey. And by 1880, we moved to Georgetown and had 6 children. We moved to Georgetown because silver was discovered there. Charles was away in Mexico when I died on January 1st, 1900. We claim relations with Prime Minister and statesman Benjamin Disraeli, critic John Ruskin, and Alfred Lord Tennyson. I thank you for visiting me today.
And Vernon Lilly. That Benjamin come from my family, from somebody named for Benjamin Franklin, and Vernon was my daddy's brother. And people called me, my friends called me Ben. Others called me Mr. Lilly or Ben Lilly. My daddy was Albert, and Daddy was a blacksmith, and he taught me many skills. I was making my own knives when I was young. Now,